If you reject the conventional and embrace what's offbeat, guess what? It's time for Pillow Pete. 3 cheers! It's time for Pillow Pete. Fuck me! It's time for Pillow Pete.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Prattling with Pillow Pete. Today I have another very special guest. I have artist, animator, musician, and former Blue Sky Studios employee, Kevin Temmer. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Was there anything else you would like to tell the audience about yourself before we dive in?
No, that pretty much covers it. Animator, songwriter, all that jazz.
Alrighty, cool. So I'll start off with some basic questions. How long have you been animating and making music?
Oh man, professionally or even just in general?
Just in general.
I mean, I've been doing this stuff, I'd say, ever since I was a kid. I was always interested in art and computers, and I was always trying to find new software to make things with. And growing up, I did like flash animation. I used GarageBand when I was younger, so I was kind of into this stuff for a while.
Nice. So I guess with that, we can actually go more into the professional side. How did you break into the animation industry?
I went to the Ringling College of Art and Design in Florida, and they had recruiters often come to the campus and look at people's work, and that sort of helped me get an internship. One of my internships was at Jib Jab, and then the second internship I got was at Blue Sky Studios, which eventually led to my full-time position there. And that's what sort of helped me break into the industry.
Nice. That's pretty cool. And before we dive into all of the work that you have done, how would you say, I guess over the years, how have you really mastered your art and even your music? Because everything you make is just simply incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm still learning. I think most artists feel that way, that I'm constantly trying to learn new things, get better at the craft. And I think it's all just really a bunch of practice. I've just been doing all this stuff for a really, really long time. And I think if you're passionate about anything and do it enough, you eventually, get better at it. And that's what I hope to do, to just keep making stuff and keep getting better.
I think you're doing great. Like I said, every time I see your art and your videos, I'm like, man, it's consistently good. And I mean, I can see the improvements too. So I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So can you tell me about the differences between whenever you're doing your own personal work versus doing professional studio work?
Yeah, I think doing stuff for myself is very liberating because, the only person I'm really answering to is myself. And it allows me, I think that freedom is it feels like there's a lot less pressure and I can sort of do whatever with it. And things don't have to be super polished or perfect. I can sort of just put stuff out there that I feel like creating. So there's definitely, I'd say, a lot of advantages to that. But of course, having a stable job is really nice, having a steady income and everything.
Absolutely. Uh, and I actually want to dive into a little bit more of your professional work, I guess. So can you tell me just, I guess, any and everything about the time whenever you were at Blue Sky Studios?
Yeah, so I started off as an intern, and that was a really cool experience because we had different exercises where they had us animate different characters doing different things. We had a ball bounce exercise using an acorn. We'd do a walk cycle, or turn and take, a lip sync, an animation with Scrat. So basically testing us out to see if we had the ability and range to be there. And then when I got brought on full time, I worked on a few movies. I worked on Ice Age 5, Ferdinand, and Spies in Disguise. So I was there for a few years, learned a lot, and it was a really great studio filled with a lot of really talented, amazing people.
That's incredible. Can you tell me, I guess, like maybe a little bit more of like each of like the movies you worked on? Like, I don't know if maybe you had a favorite one to work on, or if you even had a favorite one to just watch after working on it.
Yeah, I did the most on Ice Age 5 and Ferdinand. I didn't. I only did a bit on Spies in Disguise. I think Ice Age. There were some shots on there that I really had a lot of fun on. So I guess I would say Ice Age is the one I had the most fun on. And yeah, and I mean, of course, that was also my first movie, so that was a very big experience for me and very surreal. Just sort of seeing your work on the big screen and seeing your name in the credits next to all these other really talented people. It was very surreal. And yeah, and I think just it was very different, coming out of college, feeling kind of like a big fish in a small pond, and then just going into this giant ocean with all these other fish. But yeah, it was just like this experience where I just learned so much about the industry and myself and kind of the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like. And I think it really helped like push me forward to the next steps in my career.
Could you maybe elaborate a little more on like the things you liked and didn't like? I mean, if not, like
Yeah.
I don't want I don't want you to get fired if you have like a full time job. I don't want you to say
No, no, no,
anything
no, no.
that.
Yeah, well, so after Blue Sky, I worked at a few other places, and some of them were a lot smaller studios. And I found that I enjoyed working for smaller studios a lot more because it gave me a lot more creative freedom. I was allowed to wear multiple hats and do different things, feeling like more of a generalist instead of, specialized. Because, at Blue Sky, I was only doing animation, and, you had a supervisor you had to answer to, you had a director you had to answer to, and it was all very like, it felt just very like precise, and you were constantly showing your stuff and following the vision of someone else. And I feel like the places I've worked at after that, I've been more able to sort of put my own vision into the work that I do. Still, of course, answering to people above me, but in a way that I felt more free and that I could contribute more.
Honestly, like that makes sense because yeah, it was such like a large studio. So with like the smaller ones that you worked at, how much of like I guess like your own personal flair do you think you were able to inject into any projects you worked on?
I think a lot, honestly. Before this place, because right now I'm at a place called Squanch Games, but before that, I was at a mobile game studio called Jam City, and I was able to really just like put whatever I wanted to things. Of course, I'd get notes and such, but I was able to utilize different passions of mine. For example, I was even write a bit of music for them and stuff like that. And then at this current studio, I feel like I also have a lot of freedom in terms of like the work that I do, just sort of putting my own creative voice into things. And, it feels like more of a generalist role where I'm doing things like modeling, rigging, animating, lighting, even composing some music. So I feel like I enjoy that these other places have allowed me to sort of put all of me into my work instead of just, parts of me.
Yeah, like everything you're saying, it's like I honestly wish like some of the bigger studios would operate that way because I see so many talented artists and like some people I see online. I'm like, man, it's like I would love to see like their visions truly brought to life, like whether it's TV or like a full like animated movie. I mean, I'm not in the animation industry, but it does seem like certain companies do kind of like hinder that, I guess.
Yeah, it can be tough. You often can run into there's a lot of cooks in one kitchen, and you have to go through so many layers of approval that sometimes, yeah, vision can be sort of, muffled a bit. But different studios are slightly different environments, and sometimes if you sort of have the right kind of, I guess, pipeline or sorry, sort of workflow that sort of works with directors and supervisors, some people are more successful at getting their vision through. But I think though, particularly the way that I kind of worked, I feel more freedom in the sort of smaller studio environment where I can sort of just throw things at the wall and see if they stick.
Well, I mean, that's good. I'm happy that you're able to work at places that kind of like let you do a little bit more of like your own ideas. Like that's really neat.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoy it.
Also, because I know like earlier you mentioned you worked on like Spies in Disguise. I was wondering about that movie. I mean, I'm not sure how much involvement you had, but I remember seeing the trailer and like personally, I was like, oh man, this thing looks like really cool. And then it felt like it slowly shifted into like the usual, like, oh, what if the main character turns into like an animal? It's like, man, it's like I was honestly looking forward to like just like a cool like animated spy movie. I mean, I actually haven't even watched it, so maybe it is that. Like, you know, but like, do you know
Yeah.
like if things like changed like during development to like get to like the movie that it was?
Well, the guy turning into a pigeon thing was sort of the idea from the start.
Oh,
Yeah, it was actually it was originally based on a short, an animated short called Pigeon Impossible that it's like somewhere online somewhere. So that's sort of I think where the initial idea came from, and then I think they should just sort of built it off of that. And so yeah, it was kind of that was always sort of the idea for it, and I think just the elements around it changed a bit, but it definitely it has a mix of like that cool spy stuff with also the typical blue sky humor and wackiness. So it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it definitely it's trying to it tried to combine new elements that you usually don't see in blue sky movies, which I appreciate it for that.
yeah. I mean, maybe I'll have to check it out because I definitely don't like just judging things like, oh, the trailer just looks like bad to me. Which I mean, I didn't think it looked bad. I was just like, oh, it's like I was almost hoping I was like, man, like what if the whole movie was just like a spy movie? But maybe there is
I
that,
think
like with the
I
pigeon.
think the studio was it felt like toward the end of the studio's existence there were a lot of changes happening and they were trying to push for new things and go in a different direction, and I feel like Spies in Disguise was like a little taste of that, and I feel like if they were able to keep going, that who knows, like maybe it could have turned into something really great. It's just unfortunate that it got cut short and everything, but sometimes that's how things go.
Yeah, that is true. And like speaking of that, like can you actually tell me a little bit more of I guess like the overall air, like once it was announced that the studio was shutting down? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy for you or anyone there, but I'm kind of curious like how it all like went down.
When it was first announced that Disney was going to buy us, we didn't really, a lot of people were scared. We didn't know what was going to happen, what they were going to do with us. Some people like suspect were afraid like they'd immediately shut us down. We didn't know what was going to happen. And then, they decided to like push in a new direction, and it seemed like they had a lot of faith in the movies. So uh, it seemed like people were getting a little excited, but then when it was announced that it was shut down, I had already been gone from the studio for a few years, but it was really sad to hear that, and I was worried about all my friends there. A lot of them had families and they'd have to uproot them and go somewhere else to find new work because there's not a whole lot of studios over there on the East Coast. And so it was very wild, but luckily I think all, if not most of them, found jobs at other places. If you actually if you look at the credits of Encanto, like there's a huge amount of blue sky people on that movie, so a lot of them went to Disney, some went to Illumination and other places, so it all worked out in the end, but it still really sucks that happened.
It does. I mean, at least they were. At least it sounds like most of the employees there, if not all, were able to find work. Like, because like whenever I heard that, I'm just like, man, it's like I mean, obviously, it's like I mean, I don't know any of these people, but it's like I do hate seeing that because it's like there were a lot of talented people there. So at least they were able to move on and go elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. I just, it does suck with companies like Disney trying to, buy up a bunch of places, and these entertainment monopolies and all that. I do hope that we eventually have more regulations against things like that, because we've seen firsthand how it can have negative consequences and be dangerous.
Very true. I swear, like every time I see like, oh, Disney's buying another studio, I'm like, when does it end? It's like I'm not sure like how they even managed to do it. Like it feels like they're at some point they'll probably end up ending all entertainment. Like so hopefully
Yeah,
there
it's
are more
scary.
regulations.
I do hope, and it's very conflicting because, Disney creates a lot of really good content that a lot of people love. And I love a lot of the stuff they make, but, there's also a lot of questionable business practices and, everything with the Don't Say Gay bill. And, it's like you want to call them out and criticize them, but at the same time, like, you want to still be able to enjoy their content. It's a very like weird, conflicting thing. I mean, there's some people that seem to be just like boycotting them completely, but it's like I also want to support the artists that make good content there. Things like Turning Red. Well, that's Pixar, but owned by Disney.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I often feel very conflicted about this stuff because I'm trying to like support the content, but not necessarily support the business practices.
I feel like the exact same way, and it's kind of I guess not I don't know. I was gonna say like refreshing to hear that, but like it's nice that like I'm not alone, especially hearing somebody who has worked on like different animated things, because I feel like the exact same way. I'm like, well, I don't like the business practices, but yeah, like the artists, like I know they're just trying to do their job and just make good things. So it is a very conflicting situation.
Yeah.
Beyond all of that, though, um, can you tell me more about, I guess, like your own personal work? I'll start off like I want to know about the process you go through to make your music.
Yeah, it's not always, I say it's rarely very organized. It's usually very just, I feel a spark of motivation, some sort of idea for something that I think might be funny or interesting. And I usually compose a little song demo for it on my phone. And then I take it to the computer, put it into Logic, polish it up, and then I go into Maya and I try to create some sort of visual representation for it. I try to work quick and easy. I tend to get bored very quickly. So my goal is usually to try to get these things done in a few days. But often there are projects that take a lot longer, and those tend to be pretty hard on me, but then they also tend to be very rewarding. But yeah, it's just a matter of like, having these sparks of inspiration for funny, dumb little ideas and just trying to execute them as quickly and efficiently as possible. I try not to worry too much about things being perfect or super polished. I try to just get the idea across um, in a way that's hopefully entertaining.
I think you succeeded that because some of your songs get stuck in my head, and I swear, like most of your videos, it's like they like I get some genuinely good laughs, which like I mean personally maybe I'm a stickler, but like a lot of things like it takes a decent amount for me to get like really good laughs in like all of your content gives that to me. I actually watched like right before we started recording this. I watched the one you uploaded like just today, where it was like the memes that you created.
Oh
It's like
yeah,
that solid like minute and 17 seconds, like just laughs the entire time.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Sometimes it's hard to tell what people will find funny and what they won't find funny. I feel like it still feels like a lot of trial and error for me, but I think that kind of keeps it fresh, and that kind of humbles me because sometimes things do feel like hit or miss, and that sort of keeps me on my toes and keeps me creative and keeps me trying to keep, pushing myself to do better and make better things.
Yeah. And like speaking of all of this stuff, can you actually tell me a little bit about like some of your own personal influences whenever like you're making your videos?
Yeah, I so let's see. So music wise, I'm very, let's see. So Lemon Demon is definitely a big influence of mine. I think it's pretty obvious in my work. A lot of my songs sound like his songs. They Might Be Giants. Uh, let's see. There's other stuff. I grew up watching Phineas and Ferb. I was really inspired by that show. I think that show is like heavily responsible for me becoming a songwriter, because I think it just caused me to like view songwriting in a different way, that everything doesn't have to be this like, epic top 40s hit. It can just sort of be this fun little quirky thing. And yeah, I'm trying to think. And then of course, like visually or thematically, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.
Oh,
Those videos are a big influence of mine. A lot of people say that my videos look and sound a lot like those. The Amazing World of Gumball is also like, just like the idea of incorporating all these different styles. I think that definitely had a big influence on me, because I try to incorporate different styles and putting faces on things and having things that look like stop motion or puppetry. So I really love that stuff. We're just like mixing different animation styles, and those are like some of the big ones. But I feel like there's so many artists and musicians and animators out there that have influenced me over time. And I like to continue to be inspired by new people and find different inspiration. And, you know, like, who's to say what my art will look like for 5 years from now? Maybe it'll be the same style. Maybe it'll be something completely different, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, all of those influences. I mean, I can definitely see bits and pieces now that like you really pointed out. Um, and like with the music, because I know you were saying like, oh, not everything has to be like a top 40 hit. I actually want to talk about probably what would be your number one hit that you made, which is "What's the Matter, Martha." Like I of course have to bring that one up. So I want to know, like, did you ever expect that one to like get as big as it did, or did you just make it just like with the same approach that you go with for all of your work, and just assume like, well, if it gets big, it gets big, or anything like that?
I wasn't really sure. I was really hoping that it would get big. When I finished it, I was very proud of it. And I had a feeling people would like it, but I really wasn't sure exactly how big it was gonna get. And I think I also wasn't expecting people to resonate with Martha as much. I was hoping she'd be relatable, but I think I like struck some sort of chord that just, I don't know. I guess people saw themselves in her, especially during a pandemic where everyone was kind of stuck in this sort of cycle of the same thing every day, trapped in isolation. I think that maybe people sort of related to that frustration of that sort of that new status quo.
I can definitely see the relatability with the character, and it also helps that the song itself is just unbelievably catchy because I think it's stuck in my head so often.
Thanks.
Beyond that, kind of going back to what you had mentioned earlier, where you were saying you like mixing different styles, actually, I kind of want to go a little bit more into that because I remember discovering your work pretty early on. Like I was there like whenever you made like the first video about like student loans that has like the song and it mixes live action with puppets. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, along with what made you decide to move over to CG to do it? And unless I'm wrong, I don't know if that puppet was also CG because your work is very convincing.
No, yeah, you're right. That puppet was real. And I think I had done some animated stuff before that. Or I'm trying to remember, maybe not. Because I've had a few different YouTube channels, but that, yeah, I think the doing stuff in CG is a lot easier than the practical stuff. I have a lot more control over it. But it was a lot of fun sort of figuring out how to construct that puppet and then how to like composite it over myself. But yeah, that song just sort of came out of my frustration with my student loans, because art school is ridiculously expensive. And yeah, and I just thought it'd be funny to sort of write a song about that, but just turn it into this goofy thing where it's just like the loans are sentient and being sort of clingy, because that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, like whenever I saw that one, like I related because like I actually haven't even been able to go to school because it is so unbelievably expensive. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and I was blown away because like I already knew like just regular college was expensive, but I actually took a tour of I think it's just called the University of Arts up in Philadelphia. I took a tour
Mhm.
there once, and they were not upfront about the pricing at first. At the very end, they gave everyone pamphlets, and I'm like, oh, let me look, and I see it's like I think it was what was it like 40,000, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's average. And then it was like that was just per year if you got like the assistance, and I'm like, oh, it was like without any assistance, it was like 64,000 a year, and I'm just like, how do people afford this?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was my school. It was like 40 to 50,000 a year, something like that.
Oh,
And yeah, it's rough. And I did get a few scholarships, but it didn't really put that big of a dent in it. And I'm still paying them off. I mean, I graduated in 2015, so I still got a lot of it to go. I mean, I got a nice chunk of it done, but there's still a ways to go, and that's just the nature of it. But fortunately, there are multiple paths to success in this industry, and you don't necessarily have to go to art college. There's other things, resources. There's online schools like Animation Mentor, I Animate, things like that. There's cheaper options, and I mean, I don't regret going to college. I think I made a lot of great connections. I friends that I still talk to today, and it definitely helped me get a job. And all the things that I learned, I utilize not only in my professional work but also in my personal work. So it's definitely helped me out. I just wish it wasn't so ridiculously expensive.
oh man, yeah, that is like the one drawback. It's just like, oh yeah, it's all cool, but it's like, oh, that price tag,
Yeah.
and it's hefty. It's like I'm hoping I can go eventually. It's like I'm actually trying to save up, but in the meantime, I'm just doing these podcasts, and I actually do want to thank you for coming on to the show because my show wouldn't exist without getting guests.
No, yeah, of course. I'm honored to be here.
Thanks. And I actually have a little bit more I want to talk about before we go.
Yeah.
Kind of going on like with your music, like have any of the songs that you've come up with and uploaded, have they been ideas that you wanted to put into any professional work that you've done and just were unable to?
Um well, okay, there is one song that I wrote. It's a pigeon love song. It's not one of my more popular ones, but I wrote that while working on Spies in Disguise, and I did ask them if they could put it into the credits, and I knew it was a long shot and it probably wasn't going to happen. And of course, they said no. But so yeah, I've made attempts, but nothing really happened. Now I did. I think I said when I worked at Jam City, I did get to write a few songs for a project that unfortunately got canceled. So I don't think those songs are going to be used. But I did get to compose a little music for where I am now. Nothing with lyrics or anything, at least not yet. But it's nice to be able to sort of utilize that aspect of my passion, in my professional job, which I never really thought I'd be able to do. I also, on the side, I compose and write songs for student films, for, for students that go to the college that I used to go to at Ringling. So I've been kind of doing that pretty consistently now, which has been really cool, because I think just for the longest time, I always thought music was just going to be a hobby for me. So when I started actually being able to make money off of it, I was like, wow, this feels really cool. It makes me feel like this whole other side to me feels more like I can utilize it more.
Yeah, that's really neat. I didn't even know like you were just doing music for like student films and stuff like that. By any chance, are you open for like commission like publicly? And like if so, like do you have like pricing? Because I love getting musicians to do work. I've actually worked closely with a guy named Teddy Gray, and it's like I am always looking for like more opportunities to just get like original music like on my channel.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm totally down for public commissions. It's usually like a few hundred or something, depending on the complexity. But I'm really flexible with that sort of stuff. Yeah, I did a little music for, I don't know if you're aware with the YouTuber Uncle Al,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So he made one cartoon that I did a little. It was like a little superhero thing, Static Legs, and he commissioned me to do a theme song for that.
That's awesome. And speaking of Uncle Al, because I don't know if it was like specifically for him or like if the sound clip came from him, but I know you have the Hugh Neutron bit of animation where he's saying like you're going to be sent to the Shadow Realm. That how did you make that one? Because like your work always looks good, but like there is something about that little piece of animation that like looks even better than most of the things I've seen on your channel.
Well, so the thing is, when I make something really short, that gives me a lot more time to, or I guess, flexibility to put a lot more like polish and care into it, right? When I make things that are longer, I tend to sort of like, there isn't as much polish and things like that. But with that one, I really was trying to make it look as good as possible because I really wanted to like think like what would a modern uh, Jimmy Neutron reboot look like. And I knew the voice of Hugh Neutron, Mark DiCarlo, has been pretty active on the internet. So I thought it'd be a great way to sort of be like, hey, I made this. Yeah. And yeah, and he saw it, and he reached out to me, and it was really awesome to just like hear from him and hear that he appreciated it. So I think that's what's really cool about like the internet right now. I mean, even though Twitter can often be a dumpster fire, the way it allows artists to connect, and also just like you'll watch a cartoon that just came out, and then you'll be able to see behind the scene feature or behind the scene things posted directly by the artist that worked on it. I mean, it used to not be like that, right? You'd have to like watch bonus features on a DVD, but now there's this interactivity where you can interact directly with the artists that make the content you love. And also, it's easier to like send your fan art to them. It's just, there's this connectivity that just didn't exist before, and it's a really amazing thing. I think it's one of the more beautiful things about the internet, as opposed to all the a bunch of other things that aren't so beautiful. But
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. And it is nice that like we have that ability, especially because like you were talking about like old like featurettes on DVDs. It's like I honestly miss those because like I
yeah,
love seeing as much behind the scenes stuff as possible. But like at least there is the alternative where it's like, well, if they're not going to put it on a DVD, at least I can just see it directly online.
no, for sure. I mean, I definitely miss those things too. I miss the weird CG animated menus, and like all that stuff is very nostalgic for me. But there's just like this new interactive element to it where it's like someone can post something, and then you can ask them questions, and then they can answer those questions. So it's like you get access to so much more information now, and like people are out here getting jobs by getting discovered on social media. So it's just, there's something new to it that's just is like incredible to me. Just like some of the people I've been able to interact with, I never dreamed I'd be able to interact with. And it's just because this format of just where everyone's out there posting whatever. I just wish that all the other horrible stuff didn't happen online. But I guess you take the bad with the good.
No, yeah, like oh my god, the amount of just insane stuff online. It's like, and a lot of it does come from Twitter. It's
Yes. Yes. I don't know. It's very disheartening sometimes just seeing a lot of the intolerance and just the way people talk about things and get angry at other people. And sometimes you feel very like sort of powerless because you try to put good messages out there, but it sometimes often feels like you're sort of trapped in an echo chamber. And I do hope at some point, or I a lot of the stuff I post is like ridiculous and silly and doesn't really mean anything, but I do hope that at some point I can make some kind of a change out there, or contribute to it. I think a lot of artists want that, or people in general want that. They feel like they want to make some sort of difference in the world, but it's just sometimes it feels like we're sort of trapped in this never ending loop, and that, big changes aren't happening. But I know there are a lot of people out there, activists and stuff, that are like doing a lot, but I don't know. I apologize for rambling. It's just like it's hard to like talk about the good things on Twitter without like mentioning all the bad and just like everything that's been going on the past few years. And
no,
but
yeah. I mean,
I digress.
I mean, yeah, you don't have to apologize. Like, I actually really appreciate just hearing like all of your insight, whether it's about your work or just bad stuff on like good and bad stuff on Twitter. It's like, I mean, talk about it as much as you want to. And I guess speaking of like bad, like, I mean, this is something I can cut if you want to, because I don't want to like talk too much about bad stuff, I guess. But I think I recall seeing like your character Martha is like canonically gay, and like people on Twitter were just like just being like really nasty about it. Like, am I recalling that correctly?
What it was, so everyone on Twitter was actually really supportive. It was the people on my YouTube channel
Oh,
who
okay. I
were
got it backwards.
still a lot of support on my YouTube channel, but definitely enough concerning comments to kind of put me in a bit of a bad mood. And I'm a straight cis white male, but I going to art college and being in the art community, I know so many people that are in the LGBTQ community, and it's just like seeing these like responses to things is just so, it just makes me really upset, because I guess I'm naive sometimes, because sometimes I think we've progressed further than we have, which is seeing, I think the worst part is just like thinking like these are people that enjoyed my content. I thought like that my content had messages of like inclusivity and things like that. But then when I just see that these kind of people are, they enjoy my content and they also just have so much intolerance and hate, it's just very upsetting. And I don't know, it's hard to know what to do sometimes, because like sometimes you think, oh, maybe you can help bring people on board, but if it's just like scaring people off, then sometimes it's just hard to know what to do and how to sort of convince people in a way that isn't perceived as propaganda or brainwashing, and just sort of trying to convince people that just to be tolerant of others, let people exist, let people love who they want, let people be their true selves. And so yeah, it was pretty frustrating, but luckily a majority of the people on there were very supportive and happy about the character being that way.
Yeah, that is good overall that most people were on board. I mean, I do remember seeing just some of like those nasty comments, and like I was saying the same thing. I'm like, man, it's like what is the issue here? It's not, it's a fictional character to begin with, and it's like these people are getting like just completely bent out of shape over. I mean, I consider it just nothing. It's like I agree. It's just let people exist. It's like they're not hurting anyone. So
Yeah, and that's why like things like this "Don't Say Gay" bill are so dangerous, because we need to be teaching kids that this stuff is, that is okay, to be gay. It's okay to exist. If you're not hurting anybody. And, that's why we need to, like, people need to be exposed to this stuff early to realize that it's normal and that it's just a part of the world. Otherwise, we're just going to be trapped in this infinite loop of intolerance where people are going to continue to be raised with these ideas that, oh, those people are different from me, so I should be against them. And, it's just, we need to make these changes or we're not going to progress in the future.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I mean, I think your work definitely gives like positive messages. So even though like your work is like very exaggerated and can be silly, it's like I think your work definitely makes a difference.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I think, art can be a powerful tool. And it's like, if you're going to put messages out there, you should put good messages that, I don't know, just messages about tolerance and being nice to people and standing up for what's right. And sometimes they can just be silly videos, but I think my videos, a lot of them is just like commenting on the human condition and all that. And of course, that's just like a broad cliche term. But I think like I often just like channel a lot of my own frustrations and thoughts and feelings, and just sort of, I like to say that when I don't really write songs, I just complain and then I add music to it. Because I'm just sort of writing from my heart how I feel about things. And I think when you do that, I think that's the easiest way to resonate with people, because it's coming from a place of truth.
Yeah, your work is it is good. I like the relatability. There are good messages, and I also appreciate that even though like you have like some decent messages in there, it's like you don't like it doesn't feel like preachy. It also doesn't. You don't like make your work bland to do that, because that is like one thing. It's like I can appreciate if someone's trying to spread a good message, but like if there's content that's just bland, I'm like, it's like I don't want to watch this and get preached to. It's like I don't like that now. I didn't even like it as a kid. It's like if you're gonna do it, it's like it should just be kind of like a natural integration into the work.
Absolutely.
It feels disingenuous if it's just forced in there.
Yes. I mean, first and foremost, I want my stuff to be entertaining, someone to have a good time watching it. I don't want to just preach to them, so it's like, if someone can like have a good time and maybe learn something or think about something, then that's great, but you're right. At the end of the day, it's like, you want to make stuff that's entertaining. I think that's why stuff like, Schoolhouse Rock and things like that were really cool, because even though they were like educational, they were also super entertaining, really cleverly written songs and appealing animation and all of that. And so, yeah, I think that's like, if you're trying to get a message out to someone, you better make it entertaining.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's everything I can even think of to ask about. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about or cover?
No, I think that really covers my deal.
All right, cool. Well, before I let you go, can you tell the audience like where they can find you online? I'll definitely leave links in the description of the video as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on YouTube, Temmer Tunes. I'm trying to think where else I am. I've got a SoundCloud. I mean, if you search Kevin Temmer in Google, you'll probably find most of the listings of things that I'm in terms of my websites and social media and all that.
Alrighty. Well, I will leave as many links as I can find, and if people don't want to use those, then yeah, they can they can find you. It's not too hard. At least I haven't had much difficulty finding your stuff online. Well, thank you so much today, Kevin, for coming on to the show. I greatly appreciate your time, and I had an absolute blast just hearing everything you had to talk about today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Sounds good. Well, take it easy, Kevin.
All right, you too.
Bye.
In the middle of the night, when the moon is right, or any other time it's way ready for some funky good times as if you had a choice. Some say we're intrusive.